Today's video is different. We're not talking about sales systems or operational frameworks. Instead, I want to get personal and share 7 critical things that I had to quit on my journey from humble beginnings to becoming a revenue leader. This isn't just my story, it's a blueprint for anyone who feels stuck and anyone who knows that they're capable of more but can't seem to break through to the next level. You see, success isn't just about what you start doing, it's equally about what you stop doing. Every single person I've met who's achieved extraordinary success has made deliberate decisions to eliminate certain habits, relationships, and mindsets that were holding them back. After 13 years in revenue leadership, going from booking meetings for a photocopier company to becoming a top performer at Twilio, working at AWS, and now leading revenue at closers.io, I've learned that your potential is directly tied to what you're willing to let go of. So let's dive into the 7 things that I had to quit to transform my life and career. Habit number 1, quit hanging around people who don't take you forward. One of the most difficult decisions I ever made was being selective about who I spend my time with. Growing up, I formed friendships and relationships mainly based on proximity and circumstance. But as my vision for my life expanded, I noticed something important. Some people drained my energy, while others amplified it. Some conversations left me feeling inspired and educated, while others felt like I was providing free consulting with nothing in return. This created a genuine dilemma. On one hand, I valued loyalty and history. On the other hand, I realized that achieving my goals wasn't just important for me, it was the foundation for becoming the best version of myself and for others too. I had to accept that my goals needed to come first, not out of selfishness, but because achieving my vision was the key to self-fulfillment and being able to live in service of others at the highest level. This meant making difficult decisions about my social circle. I started to consciously create relationships with people who left me feeling inspired, uplifted, and informed. People with a progressive mindset who challenged me to grow. Think about your own circle for a moment. After spending time with your 5 closest friends or colleagues, do you feel energized or drained? Do you feel pulled towards your goals or detracted from them? This isn't about abandoning people who are going through tough times. It's about intentionally building a circle that's mutually beneficial, where everyone is committed to growth and excellence. When I made this shift, everything changed. My standards elevated, my thinking expanded, and perhaps most importantly, the momentum in my life accelerated dramatically. Who you spend your time with is who you become, so make sure that you choose wisely. Habit number 2, quit listening to advice from people who haven't achieved what you want to achieve. Here's something we don't talk about enough. Everyone has an opinion, but not every opinion deserves your attention. Early in my career, I made the mistake of giving too much weight to advice from people who hadn't achieved what I wanted to achieve. They weren't bad people, and they weren't intentionally misleading me. They simply couldn't guide me to a place that they'd never been themselves. I developed a 2-layer approach to handling advice. Layer 1 is simply listening. I'll listen to almost anyone's perspective because there can be value in diverse viewpoints. But layer 2 is where discernment comes in, actually internalizing and acting on that advice. This level of consideration is reserved exclusively for people who are where I want to be, whether mentally, physically, spiritually, or professionally. Think about it this way. Would you take financial advice from someone who's broke? Would you take fitness advice from someone who's never been in shape? And would you take marriage advice from someone with multiple failed relationships? The principle is simple. If someone hasn't walked the path that you want to walk, they can't give you a reliable map. This was crystallized for me when I was deciding whether to move to Dubai and to invest in a high-level mastermind. Many people thought I was crazy to spend $17,000 on a single event, but I wasn't looking for advice from people living average lives with average results. I was seeking guidance from those who had created extraordinary outcomes. That one decision to listen to those who had what I wanted rather than those that thought they knew best led to partnerships, opportunities, and growth that completely transformed my career. It led to my role as Chief Revenue Officer at closers.io and a life that exceeds what I once thought possible. Be careful whose advice that you take, because the loudest voices rarely have the most valuable insights. Habit number 3, accepting 80% as good enough. For years, I lived by the 80-20 rule. The idea that 80% effort was good enough and pursuing that last 20% wasn't necessarily worth the additional energy. This showed up most visibly in my approach to fitness. I ate well most of the time and I trained hard for the most part. and because I was in better shape than the average person, I convinced myself that was sufficient. Then one day a personal trainer approached me in the gym and made an observation that hit me hard. Looking at my physique, he simply said, "You could be training harder and getting more out of this." In that moment, I realized I'd been leaving something on the table. Every time I worked out, I wasn't pushing myself to my true limit. I was comfortable with good enough rather than striving for excellence. At the beginning of the year, I signed up with that trainer, and our sessions are entirely different from how I trained before. Now I leave everything on the gym floor. There's nothing left in the tank when we finish. This mindset shift extended beyond fitness into every area of my life. I began to ask myself, where else am I accepting 80% as good enough? Where else am I leaving potential on the table? In sales calls, in content creation, in my personal relationships, I started pushing for that last 20% that separates good from great and great from extraordinary. Here's the truth. 80% isn't excellence, it's a half measure, and half measures produce half results. When you consistently push beyond your comfort zone and refuse to leave anything in the tank, you discover capabilities you never knew you had. Your growth accelerates and your standard for what's possible permanently elevates. Ask yourself right now, where in your life are you settling for 80%? What would change if you committed to 100% in those areas? Habit number 4, quit living by other people's standards and expectations. This is a big one for me, and it started early in my life. At age 19, I had a full scholarship to study corporate law. From the outside, it looked like the perfect path. Prestigious, secure, and lucrative. My family expected me to become a lawyer, and society validated that expectation. There was just one problem. I didn't want to become a lawyer. I felt a different calling for myself. Against all odds and advice, I dropped out to pursue a career in sales. It was one of the hardest decisions that I ever made because I was actively disappointing people that I cared about and stepping away from what seemed like a sure thing. But looking back, it was one of the best decisions of my life. It put me on a path that aligned with my strengths and passions rather than someone else's vision for me. This pattern continued throughout my career. More recently, as I mentioned earlier, I invested $17,000 in total in a mastermind event in Dubai, and that combined the event ticket and also the travel. When I returned to England, people thought that I was crazy. Why would you spend that kind of money just to meet some people and to learn things that you could have found out online? But I wasn't living by their standards or expectations, I was creating my own. That one decision led to a partnership with Cole Gordon and becoming the Chief Revenue Officer at Closers.io. It led to moving to Dubai and building an entirely new network of high-performing friends and colleagues. It created a return on investment that far exceeded the financial cost and completely transformed my trajectory. Here's what I learned. When you live according to other people's standards and expectations, you'll never exceed them. You'll always be playing a game designed by somebody else with rules that may not serve your unique gifts and your calling. The moment you begin establishing your own standards based on your values, strengths, and vision, everything changes. You're no longer bound by the limitations others place on you, and you're free to create a life that truly reflects who you are and you're capable of achieving. What standards are you living by right now? Are they truly yours, or have you inherited them from family, friends, or society? Habit number 5. Quit doing things just to fit in. This one might seem small, but it had a profound impact on my life. Throughout my corporate career, I participated in countless work events and social gatherings where drinking alcohol was the norm. But here's the thing, I never actually enjoyed drinking. It didn't align with my health goals, it affected my clarity of thinking, and it left me feeling worse the next day. Yet for years I drank socially just to fit in, to be one of the team, to avoid the awkward questions and subtle peer pressure that comes with abstaining. I was making a personal health decision based on how others might perceive me, rather than what I thought was best for my body and my mind. Eventually I realized that this pattern extended beyond just drinking. There were numerous small ways I was adjusting my authentic self to fit the expectations of others. From the clothes I wore to the hobbies that I claimed to enjoy, to the opinions that I expressed. The day I decided to stop drinking entirely was about more than just alcohol. It was about reclaiming my authenticity and making decisions based on my own well-being rather than social acceptance. What surprised me most was the aftermath. Nothing negative happened. I still commanded the same amount of respect from my peers, I still had fun at events, and if anything, my relationships improved because I was showing up as my true self rather than a watered down version designed to please others. Plus, I gained tangible benefits. Waking up clear-headed every morning, having more energy for early workouts, and being fully present in every interaction rather than dulled by alcohol. Now look at your own life. What are you doing to simply fit in? What parts of your authentic self are you suppressing to avoid standing out? What would change if you committed your genuine self-expression in all areas of your life? True influence and impact don't come from blending in, they come from having the courage to stand out. Habit number 6, quit being beholden to external assets. I grew up in a single parent household. My incredible mother sacrificed everything to give me a loving home and to give me opportunities, but we certainly weren't wealthy by any standard. As a result, I developed a strong association between external possessions and success. In my first corporate role, I had a strong vision board with 3 things on it: a dream apartment, an Audi R8, and an exotic vacation destination. Years later, I achieved all 3. I could look at my driveway and I saw my Audi R8. I was living in a penthouse apartment and I was taking dream vacations to places I'd once only seen in magazines. But something unexpected happened. Sitting in my apartment surrounded by everything I thought I wanted, I felt a profound sense of emptiness. I had tied my self-worth and sense of success so tightly to these external assets that once I acquired them, I discovered they couldn't fill the deeper need for meaning and fulfillment. That realization led to a radical change. When I moved to Dubai, I gave myself a period where I wouldn't wear expensive watches or drive fancy cars. I gave away most of my designer clothes, and I embraced a more minimalistic lifestyle that centered around performance, health, wealth, and relationships. This doesn't mean that I'll never enjoy nice things again. The difference is in my relationship with those things. Today I can appreciate those assets as milestones of accomplishment or windows of joy without letting them define my self-worth. True wealth isn't measured by what you own, it's measured by who you become and the impact that you have on other people. When your sense of self-worth isn't tied to possessions, you gain a freedom that no amount of money can buy. You're no longer driven by your need to impress others or to acquire the next shiny object. Instead, you can focus on genuine growth and contribution. What external markers of success are you chasing right now? How would your priorities change if you defined your success by internal measures rather than external possessions? Habit number 7, quit thinking too small. The final thing I had to quit was perhaps the most important thing: thinking too small. I remember sitting next to a 25-year-old entrepreneur at the Dubai Mastermind, which is hosted by William Brown, a phenomenal entrepreneur. Please do check out his content. And this 25-year-old's business was generating $1 million per month with just a handful of employees. Coming from the background and the home that I grew up in, even being able to earn £100,000 when I was growing up was a huge accomplishment. And so now sitting next to this 25-year-old, this completely rewired my sense of what was possible. I realized that I'd been playing a much smaller game than necessary. I had unconsciously accepted limitations based on my background, my previous environment, and the expectations that others had placed on me. In that moment, I understood that there's so much abundance in this world, and the opportunity to achieve more was right there in front of my eyes. Look at someone like Elon Musk. His mission is to sustain life on Mars. A vision so grand it might not be achieved in his lifetime, but that ambitious goal creates a magnetic pull that attracts resources, it attracts talent and opportunity. It forces innovation and growth that wouldn't happen with a smaller vision. When you expand your thinking, everything else expands to match it. Your network, your opportunities, your resources, and your results. I began seeking out people with bigger visions and bolder missions. I started asking different questions. Instead of how can I earn more, I asked how can I create extraordinary value. Instead of how can I get a promotion, I asked how can I build something that transforms an industry. Small thinking keeps you playing small games with small rewards. Big thinking puts you in entirely different arenas with exponentially greater possibility. What would you do if you removed all self-imposed limitations? How much bigger could your vision be if you refused to let your past define your future? These 7 things I quit: hanging around people who didn't take me forward, listening to advice from people who haven't achieved what I want, accepting 80% as good enough, living by other people's standards, doing things just to fit in, being beholden to external assets, and thinking too small weren't easy decisions. Each one required courage. Each one meant leaving behind something comfortable, and each one involved short-term pain for long-term gain. But together, they created the foundation for transformation, from booking meetings for a photocopier company to becoming a top performer at Twilio, and from working at AWS to now leading revenue at Closers.io and living a life beyond what I once thought possible. Your journey won't look exactly like mine. The specific things you need to quit will be unique to your situation and goals. But I do encourage you to ask yourself, what am I currently doing, thinking, or accepting that's limiting my potential? What comfortable patterns am I clinging onto that are preventing me from reaching the next level? Growth rarely comes from adding more to an already busy life. More often it comes from strategic elimination, from creating space by removing what doesn't serve your highest vision. So what will you quit this week? What one thing could you eliminate that will create the most positive change in your life and career? Take action on that insight. You'll be amazed at how quickly things begin to shift. Now, if you found value from this video, hit that subscribe button for more content on scaling your success in business to an extraordinary life of accomplishment. And if you want to learn more frameworks for scaling a coaching, consulting, or agency business, make sure to check out some of the other videos on building operational excellence and predictable revenue systems. With that said, keep climbing, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.